The African Union planning to host peace talks in South Africa starting this Sunday. Now, the talks are aimed at ending the 2-year civil war in Ethiopia. The Tigray People's Liberation Front, which has been fighting the federal government of Ethiopia, has apparently not yet responded to an invitation to participate in the talks. Well, let's get some perspective now, and we speak to Advocate Sipho Mantula. He is an Africa analyst joining us in studio. Good to see you face to face for a change, Advocate. Let's start with whether all parties, if not represented at these talks, is that going to be an exercise in futility, or might it be important for those who are going to be leading these negotiations to see to it that the affected parties are involved?
Afrika, good morning, and good morning to the viewers. I will say to you that it is very important for us to locate these talks, that for us to hosting them as South Africa, this is not our beginning. And I will assume that this being the formal talks. I've just picked up on your intro to say that have all parties agreed to the talks. I will say yes. I checked the Twitter of Gabriel, the member of TPLF, last night, that they have agreed, but they want assurance to know, to say who has been invited for this talk, the guarantors, the observers, and as well as the agenda of these talks. I will say to you, these talks are coming at a level where we see the role of USA, Mike Hammer playing a role in the sense that they have met at Seychelles before, they've met at Djibouti. Now, South Africa, you can say it's a grounding for what we call the formal talks, which will get into the modalities, because the media is privy now to the invitation letter that talks about the guiding principles of the talks, that talks about the time frame, but it doesn't tell you more about the agenda, because there was a truce that was signed. There have been many talks, and I will say to you, we have to be worried about the mediators as well, because Uhuru Kenyatta comes in the sense that the TPLF have a trust on Uhuru Kenyatta. Obasanjo, there was a problem with Obasanjo, that there was an allegation that he was linked to Abiy Ahmed by TPLF. The role of women now. Say Elif Johnson was one of the mediators in 2020 with the former President Kgalema Motlanthe and Joachim Chissano when we were still chairing the AU. Now, where does Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka comes in? One will have to test her skills. Does she understand the conflict? Does she understand the dynamics of this conflict? So that's where I will ground my telegram about this current conflict. Okay,
all right. So you've gone some distance in illuminating the negotiators, or the people that are going to be leading this negotiation process, or mediation process, I should say. Former President of Nigeria, Obasanjo, and former Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta. There is mention in some reports that the former AU chair, who is a South African, we're talking about our own minister here of COCTA at the moment, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, may have been approached, but she turned this down. Are you aware of that, and what would have been the reasons you think she turned this opportunity down?
I am aware of that, and I saw it in one of the papers, but one will say, common sense might say, she's already now looking for this presidential, this elective conference of the ruling party. That's what I saw on a domestic level. But again, maybe she have thought of her understanding of the current conflict, because this has been almost a 2-year confrontation or a conflict that has even taken place, and you will need time. And she's aware that South Africa is having challenges domestically. COCTA level, if you look at local governance, she has to stick on local government issues. For her to be, collapsing. They are collapsing. For her to focus on mediation just for a padium sake, or for the talks in the high hotels, one makes sense. One will assume again, maybe again, the short notice from Faki, because the rumors are again that South Africa did not even confirm the venue when the letters went out, But I will not assume that, because one will see that our role again We are sitting at the AU Peace and Security Council. So we have the role as well. We have a duty to can host these talks. Because if you look, Addis Ababa cannot be the neutral venue for even TPLF to leave Mekele to go to Addis Ababa.
Yeah.
If one looks at that. And what is at stake again is the women and children who have been suffering there in both sides.
You mentioned the venue.
Yeah.
Maybe let's explore that a little bit. There does seem to be apprehension on either side, the federal government of Ethiopia and TPLF, who, I suppose, the issue here is that any of the neighboring countries where these peace talks could take place, there is apprehension that those countries might have a vested interest, and therefore South Africa becomes truly a neutral venue. And that's all that we are going to be providing as South Africa at the moment. But let's bring
we are giving our former deputy president.
Indeed.
Yes.
Indeed.
We are bringing knowledge.
All right. All right. Now, let's talk about Eritrea. Where does Eritrea come into this equation between the conflict between the federal government of Ethiopia and TPLF?
Remember, on my introduction, I said to you, TPLF was concerned about the invitation list, who has been invited for these talks. They have not been given that list to say who is who in these talks. Obasanjo, several times, have been trying to engage Eritrea that you need to bring Eritrea on these talks. TPLF has been worried about that, saying, but Eritrea is currently supporting the federal government in many raids that have been going on. The same like Uhuru Kenyatta, that TPLF felt that it's better to bring Uhuru Kenyatta because it's very close to the U.S. So the U.S., again, diplomacy in this conflict comes in because they are using Kenya as a proxy. How do we come in as South Africa? We come in because, like I've said to you, we are indebted to Ethiopia because we are currently chairing the AU. I mean, we are part of the AU Peace and Security Council. Ethiopia requested South Africa several times ago. If you can recall, Abiy Ahmed spoke to President Ramaphosa to say, we will need South Africa to intervene. If you remember when he was visiting ANC, birthday celebration in Kimberley.
Yes.
Abiy Ahmed reached out actually to South Africa that will want you to mediate on this conflict. And we gave Kgalema Motlanthe the space. And I can tell you on my high insight with Kgalema Motlanthe when we were speaking about this conflict, it is something that is very key. If one has to understand, because I had the privilege to engage him when he was coming back from that conflict mediation process, to say why Eritrea. I am coming to a point of Eritrea. Why Eritrea came into the space of this conflict. The attack that the Mekele government did when they attacked the army base in Mekele, it even went as far as the borders of Eritrea. So Eritrea was even defending itself, and they kept on reminding Abiy Ahmed to say, these guys from Mekele are now attacking us. We are left with no option. And the issue of weapons that were coming in. So again, if you look at this conflict, some of us who have been at that area of Mekele, we don't take it from Google, we know the sites, we know how it is said when you have to talk about a conflict of the people of an Asian country like Ethiopia, where it has been having famine, it has been having conflicts. And then we have even another conflict of the war, of the water, of the Nile River, between Sudan and Egypt and Ethiopia. At the same time, we have this Tigray conflict that has been going on that includes those neighboring states. But finally, I will say to you, South Africa becomes neutral because it doesn't have a vested interest in both parties. I will assume that. Let me maybe clarify it.
It's a complicated one. It's a complicated one, Advocate, because also part of the demand from the Tigray People's Liberation Front is that there needs to be a restoration of vital services.
Correct.
And these are banking, telecommunications, electricity, which were suspended by the federal government of Ethiopia. These are just some of the conditions. Do you think that all of these demands that are being made before the talks, if not acceded to, it might just lead to the talks going nowhere.
Yeah. I will say they will, but remember that even last month when they were celebrating their new season, TPLF raised these issues that we are willing to reach out, we are willing for the government to engage with us, but can you just restore this basic needs? And at the same time, one will assume that even if they are fighting, hunger is being used as a weapon of war here. And not only hunger, the role of foreign countries being involved. At the same time, you have human rights investigations that have been going on. And they've been accusing both sides to have caused human rights violations. So again, I will say to you, the derail of the talks will be around the state of human rights in that area, the state of what you are raising, the basic needs. Will the federal government guarantee that they will restore the basic needs? Because that's what ordinary Tigrayans need now. And that's where we cannot rely only on the UN. My worry is that you cannot rely on the UN humanitarian assistance only. When is the AU going to have its humanitarian agency working on African question or African problems? Because once we rely on the UN humanitarian crisis, we still have to wait for Geneva to issue a memo for the crisis. When the AU, IGAD, the neighboring countries could be assisting these needs.
And what happens to the slogan that says African problems
with African solutions?
With African solutions. Let's perhaps end the conversation on the note around Abiy Ahmed. That's the man who leads Ethiopia. Not too long ago, he was celebrated on the world stage as being a recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize. The conflict that continues between his government and TPLF, I heard at some point some people agitating that perhaps that Nobel Peace Prize should be taken away from him. Do you think that he has played an important enough, a big enough role to try to bring this to an end for a person who is a recipient of such an honor?
I think he did by all means. By setting up even the peace committee, he have assigned the National Minister of Reconciliation. He has tried to push the issue, what I will tell you, of to fight tribalism and ethnic nationalism in that country by saying we all need to move away from your Amara, Oromo, Tigray, have one Ethiopia. I think he has tried that. And secondly, by the way, we have trained him here. For him to be having his philosophies, his thinking. He was trained from South Africa, by the way. So if you think of his thinking, it is that he has been given that opportunity. But he's meeting Ruto today, by the way. And as he's coming to South Africa, sending his even delegation, he is already engaging the East Africa community on resolving this conflict. So one can say that that Nobel Peace Prize, it is not early because he was the youngest, by the way. We should not try to have a pessimistic overview around it. We must be optimistic about his role and this this mediation team that has been assigned by the AU. I think that's where we can end. But I will urge you and your team follow up these talks and bring the elders to come and share more about how can we resolve African conflicts.
Well, if they are going to take place, they're going to be taking place closer to home, and so we have no choice but to follow them very closely. For the time being, let me thank you very much for your time and insights on this matter. Advocate Sipho Mantula, an Africa analyst. All right, let's turn our attention to